So, I wanted to do a video on something that I got asked recently, which was how to heal the healer. How does somebody who is intrinsically a healing, giving, empathic person heal themselves when they are almost pouring out and they are being left empty? They use the analogy of a game where there is this healing entity and it almost has endless resources, endless capacity, and it can just go around healing. And she wondered, who heals her? And it got me thinking, I think that it would be a really useful video. A little bit of a backstory about me. So I am a private psychotherapist, and in my training, when I was at university, I remember having this thought. I remember, and I don't think I'm alone in this, I imagine that if there are any fellow counsellors working, or anybody who is in a giving profession, whether that is teaching, nursing, anything like a social worker, anything, you know what I mean, like these sort of professions where you are pouring into others on a regular basis. They might wonder what happens if they keep pouring out, especially in the context of if you are somebody who absorbs other people's energy and other people's emotions quite easily. How do you protect yourself from that? How do you heal yourself? And how do you kind of be in a space where you're not going to end up in burnout? I am also somebody who has experienced burnout. So another bit of context is that I am a late diagnosed autistic individual. So the insight I'm going to give you is the insight that I've used and I've also helped other clients use in healing from burnout and being in a space where you're not just going to place yourself back into burnout, but also if you are a giver, if you are an empath, if you are a healer, if you are a highly sensitive person, how do you heal yourself and keep yourself at a capacity where you are not overgiving and leaving yourself empty? So I'm going to be referring to the notes on my phone and going back to my journey when I was training and I was doing the volunteering and the counselling that I was doing. I began to notice this. I began to notice it was quite hard to have this cup, however full it was at the time, and pour and give my full effectiveness, which is just who I am. I have to give you my everything. Otherwise, I don't really think there's a point in me being there. Like, there's no point in me trying to help you if I'm half-assed helping you. So to pour everything that I've got into that person, and then the next person, and then the next person, and then also to go home and have enough left over for the people at home, my children. And at the time, I was in a bad relationship where it was taking a lot from me, and I was dealing with my own trauma. And I think that it's really important to note this, that the first point of contact in order to be able to heal the healer is your honesty. Your honesty on what is an energy giver and what is an energy taker. I would literally challenge you to write everything down. And you might not have all the answers immediately, but get a piece of paper and begin to write it down as you notice it. So for me, energy givers are having enjoyable experiences, being around people who are naturally more predisposed to finding the silver lining or finding a solution, finding a way to focus their energy. They're not somebody who feels like a victim of their life and a victim of everything. And I say that with kindness and I say that with love, because in many respects, I understand what it feels like to be a victim. I've been a victim, but I don't identify as a victim. And I had to be really clear and really honest with myself that anybody who falls into that is going to be an energy taker for me, because I'm a monotropic thinker and I don't skim, I dig. And if I latch onto something or the energy of the people around me and they have a predisposition to digging into things that are quite negative and they don't have any positive outcomes, that's going to naturally affect me. So I have to be really mindful of that. I also think it's important to be honest about your capacity and what will help you increase your capacity. So there are a couple of components of this. In terms of, for me, my capacity increases the more that I'm able to be present with my emotions. The more present I am with my emotions, where I do not distort them, I do not run away from them, I do not try to change them, I do not guilt myself for having them, but I learn to truly just be with them without any distortion of any kind, my capacity to be with that emotion gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it is at such a capacity now that it's very rare, although this wasn't true at the time, for me to have something thrown into me in terms of my line of work or in my personal life that I cannot handle and that I don't feel rock steady with. And that is really, really crucial part of this. The ability to be able to be with your own emotions means that you will be better equipped to being the healer or being the person or the anchor for other people's emotions. I think another really important component is differentiating, are you a healer in the capacity of a healer, or are you a people pleaser? Because if you are a people pleaser, you will probably feel uncomfortable with lots of different emotions that actually healers are more comfortable with. So I was listening to, I absolutely highly recommend her, she's incredible, Vanessa Van Edwards, and she talks about, she's like a body language expert. I don't think that's actually what she is, but she definitely has expertise in that. And she talks about how there's three, through her research, there's three categories of people. There is the hero, there is the healer, and there is the victim. And although not a lot of people would like to associate with being the victim, they might not realize that they have more of a victim mindset where they feel completely like life happens to them and they have no control over their outcomes, even though they're an adult now. And even though there are things that we can do that are not initially going to be very comfortable, but will create better outcomes for you, where you realize that you're in control of your life more than you thought you was. And they might not necessarily associate themselves to be that way. So I think it requires, like I say, at the foundation of this, for you to become really, really honest with where you are in your journey as somebody who is a giver, somebody who's a healer, somebody who's an empath, in order for you to be able to make the steps forward if you really are truly wanting to do that. Because wanting to do that, hypothetically, mentally, is completely different than actually doing it. I see this a lot with people who have all of the right information, but the application of that information, not so much. And again, I don't say that as criticism. I say that because I believe that one of the important roles in my job is to help people become accountable for themselves so that they can ultimately then take the power back of their life. And if you are lacking the accountability, or somebody who's going to help you be accountable in a loving and gentle way, you're never really going to budge forward out of that comfort zone. And comfort zones give you the results that you've already got. And if that's not what you're wanting, then comfort zone is not for you. And I know that that is a controversial thing to say as an autistic person and as a therapist, but I can promise you that I will get you the results that you need, but I might not give you the answers that you want. And in relation, going back to capacity, is one, understanding where your capacity is at currently so that you get to act accordingly. So if you're doing everything for everybody, why? Why are you doing that? What does it cost you? What does it bring to your attention? And you have to, again, become really honest with that. So if I'm somebody who can't say no and I lack boundaries and I still profess to be a healer, I would suggest that I'm probably still potentially have the capacity to be a healer. In many respects, maybe I am still a healer, but I'm probably more of a people pleaser. And if I'm a people pleaser, do I want to be one? And in what capacity do I want to be one? Because I actually am somebody who I like to please people, but I also like to please myself. I don't subtract myself from the equation. And I think that is hugely important. I think it's also important that, say for example, and I'm going to give you some examples because I'm an example person and examples help me to solidify anything that I don't fully understand. Say for example, I am at work and I don't work for myself, so I don't get to decide my own hours because I have a beautiful position right now that I know that not everybody has. But when I was working in schools, where actually at the end of the day, I need to check in with myself. Beginning of the day, where's my capacity at? What am I able to bring to my job today? And I have to be honest. and then where I'm at the end of the day. And again, this will look different every single day. And it's totally okay for me, even as a super independent person who likes to be the one who's giving, to say to my husband that actually I only have 20% left. What do you have? What percentage do you have? And if you've got more than 20%, can you pick up the slack? Could you cook? Could you cook and clean on this occasion so that I can fill my tank up so that I can continue to give? Ultimately, he will benefit from that in the same way that my kids will benefit from that, because my kids learn that I'm not some superhero, I'm human, and that actually my needs are as valuable as everybody else's needs. And although I might not always bring them to the forefront, when I do, I hope that they're heard. I expect that they're heard. I think that our communication in being a healer is really important. I was talking today to a client about how a client who is a recovering people pleaser, and how they for people pleasing is often coming from a place of wanting to give, wanting to make other people happy, wanting to heal other people. And I said, why don't you do that thing? And they said, because I don't want to disappoint or upset that person. And I said, is there ever a time when upsetting somebody or disappointing somebody might be necessary? And they said, no. I said, what about making somebody feel uncomfortable? They said, never. It's never something that is ever necessary. And I said, and that's the results that you get. Because, and then I began to reframe it with them, which is, there might be times when I still profess that I am a kind person, but that doesn't mean that I'm always going to be a yes man. It doesn't always mean that I'm going to make you super comfortable at the expense of making myself uncomfortable. I'm going to stop, the battle with you, but then have the war with myself. And you have to begin to redefine the rule book, the internal rule book, and the association you have with the words that you use in order to be able to start seeing things differently. Because I said, imagine a situation where I'm at a bar and somebody makes an advance at me. They touch me inappropriately and I say, I'm sorry, I'm going to be kind, I'm not interested. And I turn my body language. Away. And this person does not receive that cue. And they continue, or they touch me inappropriately. This is obviously an example. It would be completely appropriate of me to make that person feel uncomfortable, to make a scene that is clear, concise, and I'm not a dramaful person in any way, but that is not acceptable. I have been nice, you didn't hear me, and I'm making it really clear for you and all around to hear, I do not accept that behaviour. And that does not in any way, in that hypothetical situation, take away from the fact that I am a kind person, that I do not intend on hurting or harming people. But there are always nuance to every situation, and we have to be so mindful of us, ourselves, our capacity, our internal rule book, our givers, our takers, our energy givers, our energy takers, and being mindful that that can look different day to day. It's not because it's changing, but it's just because each day brings new events and new things, and you have to take it on that basis and be able to act accordingly. And I can promise you, anybody that I have asked to implement boundaries, anybody that I've asked to start showing up authentically, anybody that I've asked to give in a way that feels good to them but not in a way that subtracts them or leaves them empty, there has not been one client out of hundreds of people I've worked with, including my own results, where they've regretted that. And I think the way to heal a healer is to become really honest, to redefine words, get a clear internal rule book. So when I talk about rule book, I mean being able to be somebody who, this is how I work. I think there is an unwritten rule book that I don't really know much about as an autistic person, where the rule might be a rule here, but it's not a rule here. Like, that person, I'm going to be really nice to that person because they're my family or because I like them, but I'm not going to be nice to that person. Or I'm going to be really loving to that animal because it's cute and it's fluffy, but I'm then going to stamp on the ants on the ground. I don't work like that, but I created an internal rule book that to me makes sense 100% of the time, even in nuance. I'm hoping this is making sense, and I'm hoping that I've covered everything that definitely helped me on my journey to being more honest, being more clear, creating more clarity, being more authentic, being a healer that can give and increase my capacity without rejecting or subtracting from myself. I think that the other side points that I'll quickly just add, but people can let me know whether they want any more information on it, is we, especially as monotropic thinkers or people who are givers and healers and highly sensitive, we have to be able to implement moments of presentness where we're not in our head. We get to be free of all of the expectations and that constant monologue and that constant storytelling, because it can make us ill. Another thing is, do you know how to regulate your nervous system? Because if you don't know how to regulate your nervous system, if you don't know how to sit with those emotions, if you don't know how to let that motion be in motion and how to get it out of the body, then you're going to have to learn how to do that, because ultimately you're trying to help other people do that. As well as the internal rule book, you're going to have to create, the internal rule book does help this, but you're going to have to have a really clear concept and a bold concept and sense of self. And the final thing, get really intentional about what information, in the same way of the energy givers and then the energy takers, I think that you're going to have to get really intentional about the information that you probably subconsciously just allow yourself to receive. I became really intentional about the social medias I had. I don't want it filled with people who thrive off drama, are going to tell me the worst of the worst news, are going to represent a relationship that I don't admire. I don't take advice from people, or I don't engage in receiving information that is natural. As an absorber, I am naturally a sponge person. I don't now intentionally sponge in information or guidance from people that I would not switch places with. So I get really intentional, and my feeds are now full of people who have got information to teach me, knowledge to teach me, things that I love, like art and animals and books and science, and I get really intentional. And if my feed is beginning to not look like that, I'm obviously paying too much attention to the things that I don't want to be consuming. So I make sure that I click the 3 circles in the corner, I say I don't want to see this, and I teach the algorithm what I'm about. Your world gets to look like what you need it to look like, but you have to do the hard work. If you do the hard work, you create the smooth road later. If you want the easy option now, then you get the hard road later. And it's as simple as that. I hope this is helpful. Let me know what you think, and I'll speak to you soon.